Because we're actually going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We have a quorum. Welcome, everyone. This is the first of several informational meetings that we're going to hold to just try and answer any questions people have about the upcoming vote on June 11th regarding the addition of Wyndham to the West River District. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda, guys? We're trying to keep it pretty brief. Okay. Members of the public, if you're here to talk about the vote, questions for that, that's we have a spot for that. If you're here for some other purpose, it is a legally warned board meeting, so now would be your time to speak to that. Anybody? Okay. Anybody have any correspondence? All right, mute your cell phones. Apparently they work here.
Yes, they do.
Nobody has any correspondence? Okay, great. All right, on to the real new business. The West River, it's an information meeting for the West River vote that's been warned for June 11th to accept Wyndham in. Rather than sort of lay it out, unless you want some sort of a historical presentation or a timeline or something like that, I'd just open it up to questions from the audience, or somebody had something they wanted to point out. Because I mean, it's been covered in meetings and newspapers, and so questions, thoughts, discussion. I mean, we have financial people here, we have superintendent here. I think we can just about answer anything. Yes, sir.
So, this vote, the only thing different is adding the elementary school part to our big overall budget, right?
Correct.
And this would begin this next school year?
It would begin July 1st. Yes.
So, how does that change with our budgets that we've already planned?
It adds the budget that the town of Wyndham has passed to run their school for that fiscal year to our budget. We aren't trying to redo anything. We're just taking what they've already said it's going to cost to run that school for the year and adding it to our budget, and then letting things be the way they are in terms of budgeting. We're not going to be going back in and trying to rework that budget for the 1 year. So it would just increase our budget by what Wyndham has already said it's going to cost to run that school for the year.
I have a question.
Sure.
How does, if we voted to let them leave, how does that look for the supervisory union? Is their grade school still part of the supervisory union? Or what? How does that all work out?
Their grade school remains a part of the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union, but it is not part of this new West River Education District. And then until a point in the future, Wyndham would remain a part of the West River Education District for grades 7 through 12, which they currently are, but they've also asked to be removed from that. And that vote would happen after this vote. And in order to be released from that, from the 7 to 12 part, each town, but individually, so Jamaica, Townsend, Newfane, and Brookline, would all have to agree to do that.
Then that would mean then if we let them leave the district, say totally, then their kids could be tuition to our school district.
They would be
But
coming.
at a reduced rate of what it would cost per pupil if they stayed in the district, right? Like now it's a 20,000 something cost per student.
It's 24,000 per
Okay.
student now, and yes, the
And the
tuition rate would
tuition
be
is
less than
less.
that. Yes.
So they would be money ahead,
That
basically.
could be. Yes.
I have one question. You just talked about the Wessex vote,
I'm sorry?
the vote that's upcoming to see if we can leave, for Wyndham, to see if we can leave the supervisory union that we requested to leave the supervisory union. Am I correct?
To my knowledge, you have not requested to leave the supervisory union. You've requested to leave the West River Education District for grades 7 through 12.
Yes, but it's not the supervisory union. The Leland, well, the Leland, where she was saying we would be out altogether.
Yes,
That's what I'm talking about. You said we asked to be released.
we has to be let out, released.
Let out, released, okay. I agree with you there.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get my terminology correct. Yet, in the upcoming vote, you're asking the voters to accept us, and we didn't ask to be accepted. We, in fact, asked not to be accepted. And I'm wondering how you justify that terminology.
The terminology comes from the language of the AOE decision that the voters of the West River Education District, if there was a vote warned prior to this, would vote to accept Wyndham as a member based on the recommendation of the AOE after their
That we be
and their master
accepted?
plan.
But
They-
if we don't want to be accepted, why is it a terminology that, I mean, I can see them saying required.
That's
I
their
can see them
terminology. We
saying
didn't.
forced, but not accepted. We're not asking to be accepted.
Well, we didn't. That's not our terminology. That's AOE. So they would really be the one to answer
Did
why
you
they use
ask the
that word.
AOE why it was worded that?
No, no.
Not interested?
Uh,
Anybody else on the board? Anybody interested in why it's worded
yeah,
that
there
way?
was-
Did you ask the AOE, Ken?
No, but there was a motion to the board to change the wording.
I know that, yes.
Okay. And it was voted down. So-
I understand that.
So
but-
no one's asked for that
No one's asked for
clarification.
that.
Has anyone from Wyndham asked for that clarification?
Oh, yes.
And did you get an answer?
No, of course not.
Okay. So they're not really giving answers, is what you're saying.
How does that make you feel?
I didn't have a problem with the language.
But when you ask the state Board of Education for an answer and they don't give you one, how does that make you feel, Joe?
It hasn't happened to me, so.
Never?
Not in recent memory.
Anybody
no.
else on the board? Ken, Mike, Trish? Anybody else ever asked agency a question and not gotten an answer?
I've asked them to correct policies, to bring them into legal compliance, and they haven't done that.
Anybody else?
Okay, so this is way off topic here.
No, it's not.
A little bit.
These people are gonna have to go out and
Rather than
vote.
interview the board about who's asked what and gotten what answer, that's, you know.
I can't interview, I beg your pardon? Why is that?
You certainly can on your own time, but there may be other people who have questions that are germane to the vote rather
All
than
right, I'll
whether
come
or
back
not
to it
we-
then. I'll come back to it later.
Sure. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to have clarified, explained, discussed?
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you, because there was mentioned in the last meeting that there's a likelihood of lawsuit on this, have you heard anything about that, Joe? Have you been
No.
served any papers?
No, I have not been served, notified, communicated with in any way, shape, or form on that.
Okay.
Bill, have you? No, we have not. Last time I checked with our district clerk, which was last Friday, last Friday, she had not been served anything either, so. Yeah. I don't believe there's been anything.
So I thought of this question today because I know Jamaica has a board meeting after this. So if Wyndham merges with West River, so then do they still have like a board? But then, because obviously you're not going to come to Wyndham School and do board meetings. So do they still keep their board, but that board works with you guys? Is that how it works?
No, none
Okay.
of the schools keep their boards
Okay.
officially after July. Well, they can stay in existence to wrap up any business that needs to be wrapped up until December 31st of 2019. But essentially, if you're in the merged district, then this merged district board governs the schools, runs the schools, is the board for that school, starting July 1st, 2019. And the other boards would just take care of, wrapping up, winding up business.
So then technically, like, if you had a board issue, you would go to the meeting at Leland and Gray and it would be there, correct?
Well, yes, and we also have discussed as a board, but since we're not operational yet, we haven't moved forward with this, holding the meeting as a moving meeting so that it's in the different buildings at different, we'll move from building to building so that people who are farther away wouldn't have so far to travel, and it just gets us out to, be in all the buildings that we're actually overseeing.
Okay.
Yes.
if we vote to accept, whatever the word is, Wyndham into the district, would they have school choice to be able to go there? It's not too late for them to make that school choice?
Yes, the plan is that if Wyndham is accepted into this district, that we would, our school choice policy allows us to revisit school choice, and it's at the discretion of the superintendent. So yes, children could choose to go from any one of the other elementary schools up to Wyndham, or children from Wyndham could choose, their parents could choose to have them come down to one of the other elementary schools.
Now, since Wyndham voted to sell their school and their school bus to the town, if they did choose school choice, how would they get there? Is there a district bus that would go to Wyndham to pick up those students? Or does Wyndham then have to figure out how to transport those students with their town bus? That make sense?
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill. Yeah, thanks.
Just to clarify, the electorate of Wyndham has voted to give the authority to the school board to provide education in K through 6 as a tuition, and a separate vote to be able to sell the assets of the Wyndham School District to the town. That authority exists, but has not been acted upon as of yet. So that's just one. Okay. And then the second one is, when the board developed their school choice policy, transportation was not guaranteed. So, as Joe mentioned, if this were to come to pass, it would be my responsibility to communicate to all the people of West River that applications for school choice, with the addition of Wyndham Elementary, would be available for people to apply.
So, if Wyndham joins this district, does the sale of the school and the bus continue? Because it has been recommended that they do it. Does that school still go to the town? Or does the school stay there so that those children can then go there? Or do those children then have to find a school because the school now belongs to the town, not the district? How does that work?
Good question. That's okay. Under the Articles of Agreement, no school can cease to provide an educational program without the vote of the electorate of the town in which it resides. So if Wyndham were to become a full partner in West River Education District, the students of Wyndham could attend Wyndham. They could participate in school choice to have the opportunity to attend another place. But the educational institution of Wyndham would continue to run as long as the electorate of the town of Wyndham decided not to vote it to close.
And can they only make the choice once? If you choose to leave a school to go someplace else the next year, if they don't like it, can they choose to leave that school and come back to their school or go to the school?
The choice policy says once you've chosen a school, that becomes your new home school. So it is expected that you will attend that school the next year. You can go through the choice process again and get out of that school and choose a new school. The reason it's designated a home school is just for staffing purposes, so that we can, sort of count on these kids are going to come back and they're going to progress through there. But yes, they can re-enter the choice process and get into a different school or back where they came from or something like that. It's possible. Ma'am.
On the issue of transportation that was brought up, is there a plan in place with economics attached to it if Wyndham does join or is required to join the MUD? What happens with transportation? You said, the last time the question was asked was back when this was all being discussed down at Leland and Gray. And we were told at that time that you hadn't gotten into transportation issues. How do you now? September's not that far away, so.
Well, the choice policy does not guarantee transportation for students who make a choice to go to another school. It does, however, say that if students can be transported on existing bus routes, which for a child in Wyndham who was choosing to come down to Townsend would certainly be easy, or Jamaica, because they're reasonably close. There are ways to accommodate that on the existing bus routes. And
What are the existing bus routes through Wyndham?
There are none.
there's just, I mean, Wyndham picks up all its kids and brings
No,
them
we
to the
bus
school,
our
and then they come down to the high school,
That's existing bus.
which gets them to Townsend.
So you work with West River primarily, is
Yes.
that correct? And you're saying that West River would then come up and pick up the Wyndham students who were either assigned to or electing to go to Townsend or wherever?
In this question, what's I mean, if Wyndham joins this district, then unless the Wyndham bus has been sold, that bus would still run. There's still money in the budget to pay the bus driver. I would expect that bus would continue to bring students down to Leland and Gray as they do now, and would bring any additional students that wanted to get down the hill
Okay.
down then.
Okay, so, but have the economics of that been, I don't know, Lori, maybe you can answer that question. Do we have any economic adjustment in place for
It's-
that?
It's already happening that the bus comes down to Leland and Gray and picks up and brings students down every day. That's already in the budget. In the $450,000 Wyndham budget, that's
Right.
already in there to
But you do
run that bus.
understand that there's a time constraint on the transportation for the bus driver or anybody else who drives the bus. And as people here know, they got a note today that for the step down or step up meeting that's coming up for the 5th and 6th graders, the bus route has to start approximately 25 minutes earlier than it now starts in order to transport those extra children. And that means it has to, transport them back. So has there been, I'm just asking if you've really looked at the expense involved with that, or if you're just not going to do it. I mean, it's either way, I don't care.
I would just say we have not discussed beyond our current transportation offerings as of right now.
Okay.
Yes.
If I could just speak to the bus issue. The only difference is instead of the 5th grade students going in 7th grade, they would go in 6th grade. They would do this same time frame for 7th grade. They're just going to start it a year earlier is the only difference. We all know that, kids in the north are on the bus longer than the south kids. We've always had the bus. They take the kids from north to south to Leland and Gray. Some of those kids are on the bus for an hour. Wyndham is, very difficult. But it's, you're just saying you're going to go a year earlier. They would still have that bus ride in 7th grade.
Thank you. Yes.
Pardon my ignorance on this. So many things go up in my head at once. So years ago, when Jamaica was looking at the issue of school acceptance or not, there was also an issue of I'm probably going to use the wrong term, but a financial bond that was connected to our inclusion in the union. Now, should Wyndham not choose to be accepted, is that an issue for them as well, or is that not something they have?
Okay, so
I could be wrong.
No, it's a good question, and there are two different things happening. The vote on June 11th, excuse me, the vote on June 11th is to accept Wyndham into the West River Education District.
Right, okay.
If they come into the West River Education District, they come in just like every other school that merged, with all their debt and all their assets, and it's just now a larger district, and we sort out the assets and versus liabilities and everything, and we move forward. The school bond issue is if if Wyndham if the vote goes forward, the next vote that Wyndham is asked to have held is to release them from the Leland and Gray Union, which would take them out of the West River Education District for 7 through 12. If they were to be allowed out by each town in that, then there would be their portion of the existing Leland and Gray Union bonds, which are around $50,000, which Wyndham would then have to pay to our district, which we would then pay on the bond, but that would be their share of that. But
And there would be no future, once that 50K is done, there's no future
Right.
financial responsibility or what that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. Because they blended.
It's, yeah.
There's in and out, and
Right.
it is confusing. Even for those of us that have been living. Yes.
The kids would be going to Leland and Gray from Wyndham now. What is the percentage of those children going into 7 through 12 that go to Leland and Gray? Because they have a choice, correct? For Leland to the high school, or do they have to go to Leland and Gray now?
No, Wyndham is a member of the Leland and Gray Union.
They do. So
all
it's just the
Wyndham kids
elementary
come.
that's separate. Okay. So all of those kids come to Leland and Gray now?
Yes.
Okay. There's no school choice at all?
No.
Well, no, there is high school choice. They can choose to go.
So, but what percentage of the kids that are Wyndham students now come to Leland and Gray?
We talked at a recent
Between
meeting.
7 and 12?
Yeah.
I don't know the percentage, because if there is
Yeah.
it would be all students that attend school.
Okay, so all of them have
But
to come?
if a
There are some
parent
that
wants to
just
pay
choose- that
a
choose to go
private
private school.
tuition,
Okay.
if you want to
Green
homeschool,
Mountain.
They go to
if you want to do public school choice 9 through 12, you can go to any
Right.
public high school in the state.
But do they have students now going to like Chester and Green Mountain or whatever? Or most of them come to Leland? Because you just said they had some going to Chester.
We all have school choice, do you realize that?
For 9 to 12.
In public
Oh,
school.
I didn't realize 12 did
Yes.
too.
So it's not, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't
The
realize.
whole district, yeah.
They just can't guarantee anything.
Yes, Vermont has public high school choice
That's right,
for
okay, forgot about that.
for
Okay.
9 through 12, and any high school student can go to any high school they want to go to. 9 through 12.
Public.
We did
Yeah.
talk about this,
Pay the difference.
It is.
we did talk about this in a recent meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was 100% are currently going to Leland and Gray?
Well, we are, the Wyndham School District is not paying tuition for any students to attend
Anywhere else?
anywhere
Approach,
else.
okay.
They are part of the union. And if parents make a choice to send their kids, as in any other school, but I don't know if,
Well, it was said a few meetings ago, it said that it was currently 100.
Why don't we hear from
We
Wyndham?
have the answer here.
I'm Carolyn Partridge, I'm the chair of the Wyndham School Board, and I think currently, right now, if I'm not mistaken, we have 2 students who are attending Green Mountain.
How many students do you have altogether that were in Northwest?
How many students do we have in high school?
6.
So 2 out of 6.
Yeah, 2 out of 8, yeah. 2 out of 8,
Great.
so
2 out of
25%.
So 25% have chosen to go to Chester.
Yeah.
Because it's probably closer.
Probably
But-
closest.
I would just make the point that under public school choice, no money changes hands.
Correct.
Oh, that's
Correct.
what I was curious.
There's limits
Right.
on how many you can accept and
Gotcha.
limits on how many you can send, but no money changes hands.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense.
We have one in Jamaica that goes to Green Mountain due to sports. And she does, her parents provide the transportation. So,
More questions? Anything we didn't cover? Somebody wants to point out?
Well, the transportation thing is kind of interesting because if the Wyndham School District decides to sell the bus back to the town, then we are going to have to provide a bus route to the elementary schools in Wyndham, for the kids in Wyndham.
So I would,
That's already in their budget,
And
right?
that-
Well, there's bus budget, right?
Well, there's money in there to pay the bus driver and for, I guess, repairs on the bus and fuel, I would assume. And that money would then go into the additional, because we have to run 2 buses. One, pick up all the Wyndham pre-K through 5 children. If they were, right, if they sold the bus back, to bring them to the elementary school there. And we would also have to run a bus down to Leland and Graham back. And what-
So I would just clarify that under the school choice policy that this board developed, transportation is not guaranteed. Any existing bus route that West River currently has is offered. I think what you're pointing out, Ken, is this board would have to make a decision post this other decision that is that an existing route that would need to be replicated without the asset of the bus if it was non-existent as an asset for West River. Would that be it?
Well, it would be equitable to have a bus, if we bus route every other town that doesn't have a bus in the school district, why wouldn't we have to do it for Wyndham?
I'm just pointing out that that would be a decision this
I'm
board
just
would
pointing
make.
out if that happens, it's
But-
another expense.
Well, we would have, there's money in the budget for the bus, so presumably that money would be able to be used for the new bus, and it's being done now to pick up all the students and bring them to the elementary school and bring them down to Leland and Gray with one bus. So I think we could probably get one bus to duplicate what's currently being done and is working fine. You know, all the kids get to school, all the Leland and Gray kids get down to where they need to go. So we would have to do that.
But it could be an additional cost. Unless you have the
Except-
numbers,
Well, we don't have the numbers figured out at that granular level yet, but we know that there is an existing bus being paid for, and if that bus were to somehow disappear, we would have money that would be earmarked for busing, whether it's enough or too much or whatever. We haven't gotten to that level yet, but that's certainly something we would get to, based on the results of this vote. Go behind you, Crystal, and then you.
So, let me see, a totally different subject, not on transportation. If Wyndham is voted and joins, am I hearing it right that we would, of course, like all of our districts, the big board is gonna take on all the debt that the schools have, if any, and then also for the rest of us, taking on all the assets that we have, like the buildings. But am I hearing you right that in the case of Wyndham, we would take on the debt of Wyndham, but not take on necessarily the assets of Wyndham if their small board votes to sell them to the town? Is that true? Am I understanding that right?
So let me just clarify. So what I'm hearing you say is that
Clarification.
the Wyndham School District voters have authorized the Wyndham School District to sell any Wyndham School District assets to the town. And if that authority is acted upon, then there would be no Wyndham School District assets prior to July 1st when and if a vote to bring Wyndham in occurred, and therefore the debt would come, but the assets would not. Is that your question?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Do I get that?
I would say that that is a possibility.
Okay, and then the other piece of that when we were going through the whole process initially, one of the reasons why we were encouraged to go ahead and join ahead of time was that we would then, all of our towns would be able to, allowed to sort of keep their small schools grants and bring that to the table as we were moving forward. But my understanding is, since Wyndham didn't vote to do that they no longer have their small schools. Did this work out the way they said it would? Because it was going to be that they would not have their small schools grant, so therefore they wouldn't be bringing that to the table if they joined now.
So there's two paths to what currently is called a small schools grant.
Yeah.
One is you vote to merge and it transfers from a small school grant into a merger grant.
Right.
And that goes on for perpetuity.
Right.
A small schools grant is another path And that is a yearly determination. You apply for that.
Okay.
And the State Board of Education, in consultation with the Agency of Education, determines metrics for who is eligible, and Carolyn, correct me if I'm wrong, who is eligible or who is not eligible on an annual basis.
Right.
Wyndham has applied, and their metrics allow for a small schools grant to continue.
But if they merge with us, would that come?
Newbrook is not eligible.
They would have to apply every year, even if they became part of West River.
Okay.
I could add that one of the metrics this year, and the reason why I believe we ended up with our small schools grant, was because 2 of our students live more than 15 miles away from the next nearest school with capacity. There's a very good chance that if we are forcibly merged, those students will be homeschooled, and I don't believe that would qualify us to have a school grant, a small schools grant anymore.
I'm not sure all of the metrics have been written yet, at least that was the last communication I had. So there could be some other things that allow Wyndham to keep those.
Crystal, you had something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to clarify that our pre-K kids, because Wyndham doesn't have a pre-K, you have to choose out. So you are responsible for transportation for pre-Kers. And with the bus, I mean, if we are merged on, June 11th, June 12th, doesn't the bus come? You get the school, the bus, I mean.
Not if the town sells it.
If the current board sells it before the merger vote, then it's not part of the deal.
But if they sell the building and the bus, then how does the school remain open under the West River Board?
It would be under the
They
Wyndham
could
board.
lease it for $1 a year
I'm sorry?
from
I would get
the
legal
town.
advice and give it
Yeah,
to
we
the
would get
board.
legal advice at that point. I mean, we have to provide
I
education. If there's no
understand that,
school building,
Ken. I'm
we may
just
not have to
saying-
provide education there. I don't know.
We obviously know we have some kids that want to stay at Wyndham School, but if we're merged with the West River Board, technically, if they sell, get rid of their building and their bus, then do these kids have the option to stay there? Wouldn't it have to be a private school? So if the building
There would have
sells,
to be a vote in
the
the town
bus
to close
goes.
the school.
Right.
Right,
No,
but
to
the-
close the school, not to sell the school.
That legal clarification.
Yeah, we would need to
But wait,
seek
if
legal
they sell the school,
clarification
they
on
close the
that.
school, I don't
That,
No, they want to keep it open and
that
charge.
is not anything that they contemplated when they put this procedure together, that someone would take that step. And so we would, if that were to happen, if that sequence of events were to happen, we would have to go consult with our attorneys as to what our next step was.
But it could
We would be legally
possibly
responsible.
mean that the Wyndham kids would have to choice out, correct? If there's no school because the town owns it?
If we close the
We-
school,
we-
yes.
We don't know.
If we sell it, maybe not.
You were talking about the pre-K. So if the kids merged, I don't think we can transport 3-year-olds on a bus, but we can transport 4-year-olds. And so they would then be able to be transported and have full-day pre-K. Similar to the arrangement that we have in Newbrook, where there's no pre-K actually in that building, but those kids can be transported and brought to pre-K programs. So 4-year-olds can have the option. They can still take the 10 hours of the state-paid pre-K, or they can choose full-day pre-K at no cost as well.
But only transportation is to the 2 pre-K programs in the district. If you want to go to Timpson Hill or somewhere else, transportation is not provided.
Right, those are the private 10 hours, we don't transport to those.
As it currently is
That's
for
correct.
students over there.
Right.
For pre-K.
Okay, Drew, I know you had your hand up.
I'm a visual person, so I created a visual for myself so I can understand where we're at in this process. If you don't mind, I just want to go through it, make sure I've got this, because I've been asked a lot of questions about how this works.
If
So on
this
June
works-
11th,
If
is
this
going to be a
works,
vote.
we're gonna want that visual.
You may, and it's going to, it's for me, it's cheating. And that vote's either going to go yes or no. All the towns are going to vote, they're all going to be, all commingled,
Yes.
and all the towns are going to vote, and we're either going to have a yes vote or a no vote. If we have a yes vote, the Wyndham School District is merged K-6 with this board already. They're already 7-12, but they will then become actually pre-K 12 after that merger vote. The Wyndham School Board will finish out their business until December, and then the Wyndham School Board will no longer exist, and the education of Wyndham students will be the responsibility of this board. And please correct me if I say something wrong, so I want to make sure that everything I say is accurate.
Okay, this board will be responsible on July 1st, even though the individual school districts continue till December 3rd.
Okay, so as of July 1st, this board is responsible for all Wyndham students if this vote passes.
Correct.
Okay. Wyndham families would get elementary school choice within the district starting July 1st according to our choice policy. They also get access to full-day preschool at 4 years old?
3.
At 3 years
Well,
old?
3 that transportation doesn't
Okay.
come with.
Okay, at 3 years old, as far as the dollars and cents that we've heard so far, tax rates in Wyndham go down by 30 cents per hundred.
Yes.
Tax rates in Jamaica and Townsend go up by a penny per hundred. And tax rates in Brookline and Newfane have no impact.
Stay the same, yes. No, Tom, you go first.
The assets, assuming the school board of Wyndham does not sell their building beforehand, the assets of Wyndham, including the bus and the school, become part of the school structure of this district on July 1st. And if at a point in the future that school was to be closed, it would be only a vote of the taxpayers of Wyndham that could actually close that building.
Correct.
And the town would then have right of first refusal to buy that back for, I think you said $1.
$1, but they have to use it as a community center for 5 years.
For 5 years. So far, so good, right?
Yep.
All right, if this vote is a no vote, then we are going to be asking all of the communities, except Wyndham, to hold another vote
Correct.
as to whether to let Wyndham out 7 through 12. And if that vote passes, then the Wyndham School Board will continue to govern K through 6.
Correct.
They would become choice 7 through 12. And depending on whether those students came to Leland and Gray or not, the taxpayers of Newfane, Brookline, and Townsend could see an increase in their taxes because of a reduction of 8 additional students. And we had those numbers at a board meeting not that long ago, and I couldn't find them. In that same path, because Wyndham has already authorized the school to close and sell their building, it's possible, and we heard at the last board meeting, that the Wyndham Elementary School could be closed by the board and they could offer elementary school choice.
Yes.
That's what we had last, or they could remain open and function the way they currently do.
That's the board's choice, yeah.
All right, so if that second vote fails, and Wyndham is not allowed out 7 through 12, then we remain a MUD.
Yes.
Yes.
Wyndham maintains their board and their school, K through 6, and all 7 through 12 continue to come to Leland and Gray under the current structure.
Correct.
And any students that request to come in, for example, 6th grade, would be then parents' responsibility for tuition to come into the new district.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to make sure that I got this right, because this is what I'm going to use to explain to the public what is happening over the next month.
That's the whole, you're done?
That's it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm right.
All right, so hold on, I got Mike, and then we'll go off.
I just wanted to, that was actually very good, Drew. Thank you for doing that. I just want to add on to that the budget, we don't know, because we don't have all the facts, but the budget will likely increase even if they vote to go or stay. Like if this is a yes vote, the budget will likely increase because it's been said pretty openly that there's a strong likelihood of a lawsuit. For all we know, we could be enjoined into the much larger lawsuit. We don't know that. So we could find our towns fighting the legal battle with the state against the other 35 districts. So all of that, I'm just saying, we don't know, because Howie asked about a legal defense fund, and we didn't have any information, so I'm just saying that could affect tax rates throughout our district.
The only thing I would add to your vote, Drew, or to your visual, is that the second vote to where Wyndham would be out for 712 it's important to remember that that's not commingled and that each town individually has to agree to that. So for instance, if Townsend and Newfane were to say, yep, that's a great idea, let them out, Brookline could trip them up, or Jamaica could trip them up. Every town has to say yes. One town says no, it's not happening. So, yes, sir.
I'd just like to know how long before the state puts an end to all this and just says, you're just gonna merger with Wyndham, you're just gonna merger with the rest of them, and that's it, and it's done. None of this hanky-panky going on for a month, because the kids are the ones that ultimately suffer, one way or the other. Because they don't know which way they're going.
I think you were next, and over here, and then Bob.
All I was going to say, Drew, that as a correction to what you said, was that the taxpayers would get to vote. It's actually the voters, the registered voters, who get to vote, not the taxpayers, because there are many taxpayers in the town of Wyndham who are not residents.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of a Wyndham parent? Is there a Wyndham parent here of kids? What are your thoughts? We're making the decision that's going to affect you. I mean, you as a parent to a child that's going to either stay where they are or come to Leland and Gray or come to Jamaica or go to Townsend. Help me to make that decision. I don't know.
I can save you being put on the spot if you don't want to.
No, it's okay.
Because I can tell you that two separate sets of Wyndham parents have petitioned the Wyndham School Board to tuition their 6th grader down to Leland and Gray for middle school next year, and have been refused. And both those parents have then come to our board to ask for us to waive the tuition for their child to attend.
They've been refused by Wyndham.
They've been refused by Wyndham. Wyndham will not pay the tuition, and so then the parents can pay the tuition to us, or we can waive the tuition. By statute, if we waive the tuition, we have to waive tuition for everyone, and that's $850,000 that we would be walking away from. But there is interest from those parents.
Well,
They've asked to come.
I watch
and-
the board meetings and
Yeah.
I see parents there and I'm thinking, is it just the board members? There are a few who want it, but I haven't heard from the town and the parents, who to me, a board is one thing and they vote the way they do, but it's the families, to me, that are the ones that are affected, not the board members sitting on one of these seats and he's not here tonight, but he's adamant that he doesn't want to do this. But I am hearing from parents that, yes, they do. So as a person who's not in either of those, I don't have children there, I don't have children here, future, but how do I know how to vote? It's disheartening to know, do I want to listen to a parent, do I want to listen to a board member? It's hard. So if she doesn't want to, your explanation is very good, I thank you for that.
One second.
I'm sure she will.
One second.
I just want to add,
Crystal, could I just add something? Just to give some context of a board not paying tuition when they're running a school, that has never happened as long as I've been superintendent. When I run a school and I offer those grades, if a parent comes and asks, I want my 3rd grade child, I want you, town, to pay for my 3rd grade child to go to another school. That has never happened during my 3 years, because you're running a school.
Right,
So just to provide context, I understand it's an unusual situation, but I think it's fair to just say,
Could we hear what?
Yeah.
Yes, oh, yes.
She's leaning forward, she's gonna speak.
So I just want to clarify, this year I have a 5-year-old in the pre-K, so I pay, $150 a month. Next year, I'm gonna pay almost $400. If we merge, I don't pay $400 a month. To have all my kids in one location with an after-school program that we, the parents, pay for. You pay a daily rate to have an after-school program till 5 o'clock. You can have a job. Wyndham doesn't offer any after-school. They have a couple ukulele once a week till 4 o'clock. And then in the spring, they have walking, running club till 4 o'clock. All the other schools have an aftercare program, which is huge when you have a job. So currently in our household, I no longer work because I need to be available when kids come home. And the other point I want to make is, a couple of us parents did ask, we want to go to Leland and Gray with the rest of their class. And we were told no. And really what caused us to get quite fired up about it was they don't want to choice us out. But we currently have a Jamaica student attending for free, tuition free. So it's a little unfair that some Wyndham people that would like to leave are being told, absolutely not, you're staying. But then kids that from the other towns that aren't part, that are West River at Wyndham, one student came in tuition free.
Bob, I think you had your hand up next.
I just think that the surrounding communities that are in, or in my case, I would like to have Wyndham included. I worked throughout the West River Valley from the mid-60s through 96. I have 2 sons that did very well through, actually kindergarten, come to think of it, was not offered at that point. My wife and I shared the very difficult task, which we kind of enjoyed actually, putting our kids in the car at an old Jeep, and we make an adventure out of it. It was horrible. We transport our kids to kindergarten at Cynthia Mounds in Brookline, which provided a wonderful experience for them. And we paid for it out of our own pockets. We got through that. The other thing that comes to my mind, I was recently reminded that our association, Wyndham, and I've been in Wyndham now going on 18 years of it. Our association with the West River Valley situation, not previously referred to as what it is, the West River Unified District. That association, 7 through 12, is 50 years old. And I haven't been able to find anybody that I've talked to quite aggressively in the last 2-3 weeks who can relate to me any serious problems that were accounted for in that time period. And if there's anybody in this room that's aware of any, please let us know. And I also think that moving forward, another point on that is any votes we've had held in Wyndham, usually there's around 290 to 300 and something registered voters. I've never seen any vote on any education budget that involved all the voters. I'm sure that's probably a problem in all your towns. So, just so you know, there are people in Wyndham that don't agree with all the votes. That's the democracy. If you can't get them all to vote, that's not the problem of the board, it's not the problem of the school boards, it's the problem of the person that stays home and doesn't get involved. The other thing is, I think if you look at Act 60, then 68, and now 46, the Vermont Supreme Court took that Brigham decision, and they ordered the legislature way back, and the primary reason for it was they decided that for the first time ever,
that Vermont was not providing the best possible education for every child in the state of Vermont. So as I understand it, the legislature was directed to come up with an answer to the problem. They developed 60, 68, now 46 as amended. The bottom line on that is to give every kid the same opportunity for the education that all the other kids are getting. And as I look around all the schools that I get into, I feel that Townsend has some really terrific opportunities down there for kids through all grades. There's going to be some stumbling blocks, but I think we have to look at it. We're losing 1,000 kids a year in the state of Vermont and our student population. We have to start making our education communities a little bigger than the one isolated school. I think it's great. I mean, a lot of people grew up going to one-room school levels. Some towns have 11 district number something schools. They had to consolidate. We're at a point in history where we have to do that too. Not only just for the benefit of the kids getting the right education, but so people can afford to pay their taxes for that privilege. And I think if the other towns go to the booth and with those thoughts in mind, there's only one answer that you can give. Wyndham belongs in this program. Thank you.
Mike, I think you were next.
Yeah. I obviously understand that there's people on both sides of this issue, and there probably isn't a cut and dry solution for everybody. I do have empathy for the points that Crystal has made. I even agree with some of the points that this gentleman just made. Where I struggle with the vote is Wyndham's voted on this 3 times, and it's always been an overwhelming majority for what they want to do. So I'm not a Wyndham resident, but I am an at-large board member, so I try to factor in the opinions of all the towns the best I can. And, you know, just like you said, there's been 50 years without any problems. That is also a reason to not circumvent a legal vote of the people of a specific town. So that's my 2 cents.
One sec. Carolyn, you were next.
Well, I'd sort of like to respond to the question that you asked about the parents. And I know that there were some parents who would very much like to be here tonight, but Wyndham is having its concert. And so they are at the concert. I'm going to try and talk them into coming to the meeting at Newbrook tomorrow. Whether or not they'll be able to, it's a little bit more of a distance, especially for that family that gets us our small schools grant.
We are holding a meeting June 3rd in Wyndham. So
correct.
That would be the opportunity for them to come.
Yeah, and I think they'll be there. But there's also been a lot of conversation about this tuitioning issue. We've been called liars, we've been called deceptive, we've been called hypocrites on Facebook. And I would just like to take the opportunity to, number one, say that that is slanderous or maybe libelous. But the parents, and by the way, we've only had one parent come to us officially to ask to tuition. As far as I know, Crystal, you were the only one. But the answer remains the same, because these requests were made just recently. And we put together our budget for this year back in December and January. And these numbers were not counted in that. So we felt, you know, we needed to do our due diligence and our fiduciary duty to Wyndham vote, you know, taxpayers and voters. And so we really couldn't say yes to these folks that wanted to have that option. We couldn't do that. Crystal brought up a student who is from Jamaica. The student actually lives in West Wyndham, and any of you who know, West Wyndham is 3 miles past the school, essentially. And that student is doing really well. We consulted the teachers. We made sure that this would not be a problem at all for our school and our school population. That student is now with us, doing really well, and she is not costing an extra cent to our school. So in terms of fiduciary duty, I think we did our job. And I'm sorry that the parents who would like to send their sixth graders down to Leland and Gray are disappointed, but we did not factor in the money, and we could not do that. So I'd also like to add, if I could, the transportation thing. My understanding is that if we are forcibly merged, the contracts that we have signed with all of our staff, including 2 teachers who have put in over 30 years of service to our school, those contracts will be null and void. And I can't guarantee that the school bus driver who signed his contract will be willing to take on this job for the money. And I will just tell you that over the years, we have looked into contracts with other companies. We've looked at different options for leasing buses and providing bus drivers. I happen to be one of the bus drivers. And the cheapest option is to own our own bus and to provide our own bus driver. That has been the most cost-effective way of doing it. And if you try and hire another company, it's going to be way more expensive. There are dead miles from wherever the bus is coming from to Wyndham, driving around, back down 2 times a day. It will be costly.
Just one question before, Bill can speak to the contractual issue, but I just wanted to check something, because you were saying that, the tuition request came at a wrong time and you weren't able to budget for that. So a student who is further down in the progression of grades, were they to let you know now that they would like to come down to Leland, should the vote fail and Wyndham remain alone, if they were to get to you in time, are you saying that then you would then budget and put those kids down in Leland and Gray and pay tuition for 6th grade and let them come to the true middle school if you had the appropriate notice?
I can't speak for that, Joe. I'm just one of the school board members. The others are not here, but we would certainly consider it. We would consider it.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
Oh, just about the contractual.
Answering the contractual question.
Thank you. Carolyn is correct, because the law of Act 46 has very specific language about merging districts and collective bargaining agreements. That is very clear. There is not a clarity for people that have contracts that exist as the 2 professional licensed employees at Wyndham. But I believe Mr. McFadden suggested very thoughtfully that he would anticipate this board to honor those contracts, and I believe that I agreed with Mr. McFadden. It would not be my decision to make, but it would be my recommendation to honor those contracts.
Well, I know there is concern on the part of one of our teachers that she would not, and it's her last year of teaching, she's going to retire, and that she would potentially be moved to another school. And that would be extremely unfortunate.
That would be a possibility in looking at what the realities of the student population are. You are absolutely correct.
Drew, you had your hand up and then we'll go to the back.
I just want to clarify the vote number. So March 7th, 2017, town meeting day vote on the Act 46 merger. The vote failed. There were 66 in favor and 74 against. So I just want to make sure that, the overwhelming, it was not overwhelming, it was actually very much a split vote in the town of Wyndham. And that, as I said at the last board meeting,
About the 2 votes after.
the information we have today is very different than the information we had on March 7th, 2017. We know a lot more about what this merged district looks like. We know a lot more about the educational opportunities that are going to be afforded to these children. And I think when this vote goes forward, we can explain that to not only the voters in Wyndham, but also the voters in all of the communities that this board represents, and let the voters figure out what they want. I don't think providing information about what the future is, one way or another, is bad. Voters need to be informed so that they can make good decisions. And I just like to thank, especially the school board that I know I have to run out, people for coming out tonight and asking questions.
Yeah, sorry, the Jamaica School Board has to leave because we have our morning meetings now. for the camera, not running.
Well, thank you
Thank you
all.
for the
Thank you,
information.
board members.
Thank you.
If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out, come to another meeting. Just wait with the motion and then go ahead and ask your questions. Go ahead.
Two issues. One was what Drew had to say, let the voters, now that they have more information. I couldn't agree with you more, but there's still huge missing pieces of information that you're not going to have by the 11th of June. You're just not. And one of them is the busing issue. I know this firsthand. I happen to live with the bus driver. And I know what time he has to leave the house in order to drive four high school students down to Leland and Gray. He leaves the house at 6:30. He starts the bus at 7:15. This time of year, he starts it at 6:15. He starts it at 6 in the wintertime so that it's possible for them to get on the bus. So he leaves at 6:30. If we have 5 more 5th graders, he's going to have to leave by his estimate, and he'll be at one of the next meetings. He's at a different meeting tonight. He's estimating that he will have to leave the house by about 5:30 in order to make the loop to get these kids and get them downhill in the wintertime. You might be able to make it by 5:45 this time of year, because our climate is not like yours downhill. And I think you know that. We had snow a week and a half ago. You didn't. But it's just crazy. I mean, it's a high-risk rural road. Transporting 14-year-olds, they're somewhat comatose on the bus, so you have to mostly be worried about whether they're even paying attention to what you might direct them to do. But as you work your way down in age, there's a section I'm sure you're all familiar with of Windham Hill Road with a million little lights on it now and new guardrails where there is no side. When you have a pit on one side and a wall of dirt on the other. If you skid, slide, somebody else skids or slides, there's nowhere to go. And if you stop, there's nowhere to put the kids. You can't put them on the side of the road. There is no side of the road. You're either going to pitch them over the guardrail or you're going to flatten them up against a hill. Boggles my mind every time he has to go out there and drive in that weather. I'm thinking to myself, how's he going to live with himself? And he's a very good driver, as some of you on the board know. How's he going to live with himself? If somebody's child gets injured because the state decides it's cheaper to put the shrinking of the system on the backs of the kids than to maybe cut back on the supervisory unions, of which we have 65, 64?
53.
53 out of how many school districts?
296.
296 school districts, yes, and we have 53 supervisory unions. But you want to close a school and make kids drive 15 miles, it's crazy. And I think you're asking how the parents feel, which I appreciate enormously. I am not a parent of an elementary student anymore, not in Wyndham, but I was for a while. To me, and I was a teacher, it's unconscionable to me that you would take kids out of their own community and put them on a high-risk rural road and just say, oh, no big deal. And you don't have these figures ready for it. There is no transportation plan. So what's it going to cost?
Sure.
Yeah.
So just in my opinion, I don't believe anybody on the board has said that we're closing Wyndham School. In fact, I believe everybody on this board has said the same thing. We are not closing Wyndham School.
And I absolutely understand that.
So the transportation routes, where those kids are going to school, doesn't change. This vote is two questions. One is to have Wyndham join become a full member of this district. And the second question is to adopt the budget of Wyndham to maintain the Wyndham Elementary School. The only difference is, as far as students moving, would be the sixth graders would be riding on the same bus as the seventh graders. And if parents decided to exercise school choice, either to Wyndham or out of Wyndham, that transportation is not guaranteed, but could be on that same bus if space allowed. That's what our policy says. But this board has never said they intend to close Wyndham School.
I know you have never said that. In fact, you many times said that's not the case. I've heard it numerous times. But at what point does it become not viable? I mean, you're going to make Wyndham make the decision. I get that and I appreciate that. It's one decision you will allow us to make, I think, without calling for somebody else to vote it. But how do you explain this? How do you deal with this transportation issue?
You already have.
No, we haven't. We don't have anybody under the age of 14 driving down there. 14. You're talking about going down fifth graders now. They're going to be.
Kids are 12 when they enter seventh grade.
We don't have any seventh graders.
You
But
have?
We don't right now.
Right, but we have.
We have had.
12,
yes.
yeah, so
All right, so you're 12 when you go into seventh grade. You're 10 or 11 when you go into fifth grade. And if somebody says, I elect to go to Townsend in second grade, are they 10 or 11? No, they're not. Do they want to sit, where do they go? You get the bus down there in time for the high school, where do those kids go while they wait?
That's up to the parent to transport them down
it's the same
Right.
to
It's the same.
So, obviously, if a child says, I want to go down to Jamaica School from Wyndham, it's not the child's choice, it's the parent's choice.
The parents' choice.
So if it's going to be the parent's choice, then the parent has to say, I can get my child to the bus route down on Route 30 in time to catch the bus from Route 30 to Jamaica.
And
That's
when
it.
we get down to 5 students, where's the cutoff point? Where's the cutoff point where, no matter what any voter says or doesn't say, it's no longer viable?
Yeah, sure.
Just really briefly, I just want to make sure it's really clear and understood that this board doesn't have the authority to close Wyndham School.
I understand
And
that.
I know, I know you're saying that,
understand
but I mean, the only people who have the authority to close Wyndham School are the voters
Right.
of Wyndham. So we would operate as a board that we are educating children in Wyndham unless Wyndham chooses to close their school. I just want to make sure that's really,
I really do understand that.
I'm not sure everybody does.
You and then over.
So Jamaica's being put in a similar situation. I mean, at some point, Jamaica's going to have to make that decision, is it viable to educate students here? The transportation, we don't have, our kids could choose transportation. There's no new bus routes being created. It's, if you want your kid to go someplace else, you can get them to the nearest bus stop that will take them to that place, and they will get you there. You know, we're going to have to make those same kind of decisions as residents of Jamaica, which is painful. And again,
Appreciate that.
every time I get upset, I cry. It's not, it's just the way I am. It's a decision we all have to make. There's no clear answers in how this is going to work. It's never been done. You know, they're trying to go through it as best they can too. And we all want what's best for the kids. And I guess thinking about how that's going to happen, I don't know. And I guess I don't really have answers except to know it's a lot of hard decisions. It's hard decisions on them. It's hard decisions on us. Wyndham's got these tough decisions. You know, it's a guess. Who's going to make the correct decision? You know, I don't know. I guess I'm just more emotional in thinking about it's important decisions, and it's not us versus them. It's us for the kids, and we need to remember that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just reiterating what Val was saying. We're going through it in Jamaica. It's been kind of heated discussion back and forth a little bit.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's a personal choice. For me, I chose my kid to stay here in Jamaica. This is where I grew up. This is where I had things. And I'll fight it to the bloody end. It's Yeah. But, and then it could come down to the townspeople, my neighbors, my friends, voting to decide to close it. You know, not my decision. Whatever happens, happens. And if it splits families, friends, and it does, it happens everywhere. We will deal with it. I'm just always afraid of what happens to the kids.
Me too.
My daughter is a mess right now trying to figure out whether she's going to school in Jamaica or not. And I've told her, this year you're going to Jamaica. It will be a class of 4 in her grade. But I says, you know what, hon? You will do the best you can. And I says, you're not in a class of 20, so you'll get all the attention. She'll probably be a drama queen by the end of the school year, which will make fun of me. But
Sorry.
it's just gonna make it worse.
And I'm sitting here thinking how thankful I am my kids are all grown and how lucky I was when they were young that life was easy back then.
My
We had no
grandchildren will
decisions.
be coming here.
And we'll have a great
2
grandson,
years.
hopefully.
Take it year by year.
We are.
Is my only advice to you, is to take it 1 year at a time and see what grows and what develops, and who knows, the state may can the whole mess, make it better, make it worse. Right now, I think the decisions are being made for us, or forced upon them, you up there, from people who sit every day and maybe don't know what's going on. Because geographically, we're different from the Northeast Kingdom. Geographically, we're different from South Burlington, whose teachers and wages are astronomically better than anybody else in the state. I mean, they got 100% benefits, for Christ's sakes. Nobody in the world gets 100% paid benefits in this country, in any profession. And I don't know what it will bring, but every year we face, you know, we'll be facing this decision whether Jamaica closes or not, so.
Yeah,
Well, I really appreciate a lot of the thoughtful remarks that have been made, and I appreciate what Emily has said. But I think that Act 46 has been constructed in such a way that, well, I understand that it's the town that makes the decision. Are you okay?
No, it's,
Okay. So while it's the town that is ultimately going to make the decision about school closure, I think the deck is stacked against us. And you know, I'm also hearing from other Wyndham parents who live on the north end of town who would actually prefer, they've said to me, you know, if the school were ever to close, I'd like my kids to go to Floodbrook. But if we are forcibly merged, they are not going to, you know, and we decide ultimately, well, if we're forcibly merged, the choice will be Jamaica, if it's still around, Townsend, and Newbrook. And I think that there are parents in my town that would really like to have more choice, which is why ultimately we would prefer to not be forcibly merged. It's why we're working hard to not be forcibly merged. And ultimately, if we do close, I think our parents would like to have more choice than the 3 schools here, just because we're not one of the river towns. We're a mountain town that is, for some of our kids, it's better to go to Green Mountain. It might be better for them to take their kid to Chester Andover. Or some folks might want to go to Grafton. So this is one of the reasons that we would really prefer to remain remain autonomous at this point, honor the contracts we have with our teachers that are already signed, use the budget that was unanimously voted on at town meeting, even though it went up 16.26%, and then make decisions about our school in the future for ourselves. So I see you shaking your head no, Joe, and.
Well, no, I actually, I don't understand why you assume that the goal of this, and ultimately there's closure in there. As I understand it, Wyndham has some really cool partnerships with some of the local Wyndham citizens that allow kids to experience farming and blacksmithing and pottery and all that stuff. If Wyndham were to be merged in there, this board would be foolish not to consider expanding those offerings. There's an incredible opportunity there. How many of our high school kids would, love to go up and spend months or more months on a farm?
They already can, and some have.
But not as many. It's not as integrated. It's not as fully offered, and it doesn't start at the elementary level and build up.
You know what, Joe? Anyone who wants to come up the hill and go to the farm school, I believe Lee Marinoff would say, "Come on up. We'd be glad to have you."
Right, but there's no formal procedure for that.
It doesn't
it's not
matter.
a program
You can
we
just-
offer.
you already
It's just
do
this
it.
cool thing. So if that exists and we can build on that as a district, it makes our district stronger. It attracts choice kids, not the assumption that we're looking to get rid of Wyndham is just wrong.
Well,
If Wyndham were to join us, Wyndham would probably make us a stronger district if we leveraged some of the really cool things you do up there. Now, there's also things that I'm sure Wyndham kids don't get, such as, full day pre-K, access to the middle school now starting in 6th grade, some of the things that the after-school programs that, you can't do because of your size, you're limited. So there are benefits there for Wyndham in this merger, as well as for the rest of us in this merger. But everyone comes at this as you're trying to close us, you want us gone, you're going to force us out, you just want to take our kids away, and that's not what's happening at all.
Well, I'm glad you feel
there's
that
a
way.
larger picture there that can be embraced, but it's not.
I'm glad you feel that way. I just want parents to understand that if they are going to participate in the free all-day preschool, they're going to have to provide transportation. The school bus driver is not, I really would prefer not to be driving young children down that hill as a school bus driver. So parents are going to have to provide transportation for that sort of thing. But right now, all of the things you're talking about basically in terms of coming up our way, you can do it already.
No.
And
A Townsend Elementary kid can't just decide for a month to go up to Wyndham and go to school. A Leland and Gray kid could maybe figure out a co-op program, but a kid in Newbrook Elementary has no chance to come up and spend any time at the farm school as part of their formal education. That process doesn't exist.
Sure they can.
Absolutely.
Their school doesn't
school
allow that.
That's
There's
their
no
problem.
formal process for this.
Well, you can't say the school wouldn't allow it because it hasn't happened.
Right, but
You're not recruiting. You haven't made this a possibility at Wyndham for this to happen for these kids. These kids don't know that it's an option. And if somebody were as a parent to say, "Ooh, I think that would be a really good idea, I should do that," they're going to do the same thing you did. Well, we're not going to be able to pay tuition and we can't transport you.
But Joe,
but if we
farm
formalize
school-
the relationship, we could expand
You're
it.
mixing apples and oranges here. Farm school is its own entity.
it's not part of the Wyndham school.
It's not part of the Wyndham school.
Well,
Lee
we
Marinoff
do
does
it every
separately.
Tuesday morning.
That's
8 to
right,
9.
Tuesday and Thursday.
That is part of
Yes.
the school,
Right.
8 to 9. How can you say it's not part of the school?
But Crystal, you can say it's not part of the school because it isn't. And if Jamaica wanted to send kids up to the farm school, one morning
So then
a
what
week,
happens to our children?
They just
if
have to
they're
organize it.
Kicked by a cow while they're there. Like, if it's not part of the school thing,
it's not part of the school.
Okay,
Then
well-
it has really good insurance.
that's off top.
All right.
I have one last thing, and I'm going to shut my mouth. All the things that you're bringing up, Joe, are good things. All possibilities are out there. With the school choice that the supervisor, that the MUD, and I'm not using that term derogatorily, that you've put in place. First of all, you initially said nothing would change in the first year, probably not the first 2 years. And all of a sudden, the 6th grade is going to go across to Leland and Gray. We aren't even in the thing yet, and it's being moved. So, okay, nothing's going to change, but it did. Now there's choice, kids are choosing to go here, there, or everywhere. 33% of their kids have moved on. I don't know what's happening in Brookline, New Brook, I don't know. Our fifth graders are, if we are merged, are gonna have to go down to Leland and Gray. That's 37% of our kids. Exactly, so now we're down 30%. And what if we get a few kids whose parents say, gee, you know, I work in Brattleboro, so why don't I just drop my kid off at Newbrook or wherever, you know, Townsend. And we could be down to, I don't know, 3 or 4 kids. So when you say you're not closing us, no, you're not closing us, but you're putting us in a position where we might have to close. If all of this had been done as it was going to be, nothing is going to happen, and we could see how it shakes out. If he chooses to go away, what's left? But you wouldn't do that. You're allowing the other towns to, we had a Democratic vote. Wasn't a huge margin, but it was our vote. What if we all came into these other towns and said, oh, wait a minute, we want a do-over? It's just wrong. And you didn't have to do that. It wasn't necessary, it wasn't required. You just didn't want to be the bad guys. So you're putting it on your constituents to make the decision for you. The state didn't mandate that you not vote it yourselves. You could have voted as a board, but now you put it out for a public vote.
You could have voted as a board to do what?
To leave us alone.
To decide not to vote.
To decide not to vote.
We could have not warned the vote.
Yes, you could have.
But we agreed that since that vote, you know, since they had the right to speak, they should be allowed to speak.
Well,
to take that right away from our
But you're
voters.
taking it away from us. You don't mind taking it away from us.
Actually, the legislature laid this procedure out, and we're following.
So I blame
what's
you,
there.
you blame the legislature.
I'm not blaming. I'm just saying that this was all laid out in the procedure, and you know, it said if we warn the vote, then they have the right to speak. We gave them the right to speak.
Whatever.
I just want to touch on one thing, like what Drew said about the voters. 140 people out of 307 registered voters. I went to our town, I got this information today, voted on the merger. It was done during town meeting. I mean, all of you may be able to attend town meeting, I'm not sure. But
It was open till 7
a
p.m.
lot of people can't do it because they work. And that vote doesn't stay open
It was
till
open till
7.
7 p.m.
Yeah, the original merger vote was Australian ballot.
Australian
and it would have been whatever
But
normal
out
Wyndham
of
poll now is like 10 to 7.
306 people, 140 voted. Now, when this all came out and about, I'm not gonna lie, I mailed information to every voter. I called every voter. And a lot of people were like, thank you for telling us. Because in the past, we've had no idea. We were told it's hung in the entryway at the town clerks. Well, we didn't see it. Well, it's hung in the school. Well, I don't have kids. So I just wanted to touch that. Out of 307 voters, only 140 voted. They won by 8 or 10 votes. That's not overwhelming. And I also wanted to touch, I had no intention of bringing this up whatsoever, but Carolyn opened the door to it. If you want to talk about Facebook posts, look at Howie. His posts are so beyond inappropriate. I've screenshotted almost all of them. I've sent them to Joe, and I've actually demanded he be brought up on a code of conduct. To the point, some of you were personally mentioned as trying to shut us down. I had no intention on opening the Facebook issue. You opened that door, so I'll open the door. The 3 votes were not on the merger, only the one on March 7th. The other vote was sell the school, the bus, the assets. And the other
Those votes were
vote,
overwhelming, though, right?
65 to 3 in favor.
again, that vote was done during the snowstorm. Most of the voters did not come out.
It was a town
It's up to them.
Right,
meeting.
but
It was a town meeting.
it wasn't town meeting.
The 90 minutes.
No, that was November. Town meeting was the one that authorized us to
I only have 2
2020.
minutes.
We have 2 minutes left until our 90, so.
At the end of the 2 minutes, we have informational sessions coming up in Newfane, Townsend, and in Wyndham. So if anybody on the camera wants additional information, poll times are in every town, but absentee ballots are available. So there's no reason that all voters shouldn't have access to vote on this issue. So hopefully all the issues that have been raised about access to information, access to voting, we've addressed. We've gone out of our way to make sure that the public has the opportunity to ask questions of us in every single town. You can go get your absentee ballots now. You can vote on the 11th. The times are in the warning, but hopefully we've done a good job at providing the best information, and hopefully we'll have a huge number, 100% voter turnout on the 11th.
And there's also a mailer that should hit your mailbox towards the end of this week with information about the last 2 informational meetings, plus more just sort of general information about how this shakes out, to remind you.
And Joe, just to point out, to say that Wyndham had only a 50% turnout, do you know what the percentage was in every other town? Then you can't say that it was terrible.
All right.
Okay.
I have an executive session, so don't go anywhere.
Yeah, don't leave board. We have an executive session. Thank you all for coming. There's another meeting tomorrow night at Newfane, if you didn't get enough tonight.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, Newfane. And there's 2 next week too, if you want more. So we have cookies. Would anybody like a cookie? I'd be here all night. I don't know where the cookies came from. We're out of executive session. Bill, you want to make a recommendation?
Yes, West River Board, I'd like to formally request or recommend Pam Bernardo to be the principal of the Jamaica School for the 2019-2020 school year.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to
Offer the position
of principal for the Jamaica School for 2019-2020 school year to the 0.5 principal position to Pam Bernardo, you say? And adding to that, to authorize the chair to sign the contract?
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, any discussion on that motion at all, folks? Questions about anything?
Just thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice.
Thorough process.
Good process. Sounds
Good
like-
job for everybody involved in half a principal.
We got a whole principal half the time.
All right, so,
Maybe a left or
you ready to
right.
vote then? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. All right. Any other business, folks? All right, one more motion.
Motion to
Tomorrow
adjourn.
at 7 p.m.
Tomorrow, 7 at Newfane, even though you don't need one. Who wants to bring the cookies?
All over again.
Whoever did bring the cookies, thank you.
I'll bring it tomorrow.
We're adjourned.
You're traveling until they're gone.